What's up, everybody? Welcome to a Star Wars The Force Unleashed Let's Play. And you may say, Greg, why would we be playing Star Wars The Force Unleashed? It's because the one and only Sam Witwer is here with me.
Yes.
That's
I'm,
you.
I'm here.
You're
right
him.
Here.
You're that. That's your shadow right there.
That's
probably.
me. You got it.
The Star Wars Force Unleashed, an older game. It's been around a while now.
It's been around. When did it come out?
Oh, don't ask me those kind of questions.
07?
I can go.
No, 08.
Is that
it
right?
came out in 08, I believe.
You
Yeah.
just make so many games nowadays, you can't keep track of all
So
these,
wait a
like,
second.
timeline things.
So let's do some math here.
Let's
that
do
means.
it. I'm bad at math.
Wait a second. If it's 2014, did it really come out in 08?
I don't know.
That would make it 8.
I'll get the box. I'm gonna get the box. Look at the box.
That would make it 6
Hold
years
on.
old.
Moving around. Copyright. 2008. Copyright.
2008.
Lucas Entertainment.
So yeah, this project started out at the code name was Star Wars 07. It was supposed to come out in 07, and then it was pushed to 08 because we were trying to do all this crazy physics.
And it worked out.
Yeah, it did. It did. It's interesting because this game, the story and the things that we actually shot, and it was a lot bigger than what was actually in the game. And when you cut it down, because we just didn't have time to finish everything.
Yeah.
It was still a pretty good size story in terms of the feel of where everything goes and where the characters start and where the characters end up. But there are some things that were cut that I'm sad that.
Well, tell me about them. Can you? Are you under
Well, yeah,
NDA
there was
still?
a lot more detail.
I mean, they don't even own the game anymore.
They don't own it. They've sold it to GameStop.
No, I mean,
GameSpot. GameSpot? GameStop?
GameStop. We don't say
GameStop.
GameSpot around here.
No. That's right.
Traitors.
There was a lot more detail in the Starkiller Juno relationship that these two.
Everybody loves Juno. Does that blow your mind? Like
Natalie Cox, man.
Well, and I don't even mean that they just love her as like that's you right there. Not
is.
you. That's a robot. But you over there. But the fact that like when you go and talk to people about Star Wars video games, she's one of those characters that stands out that people still talk about. Which is crazy. I think.
Which is that was the interesting thing about this is that kind of like in George's movies, certain things get cut, but the ghosts of certain ideas still kind of linger, and you can feel the ideas still permeating the scenes that do exist. And Juno, there was a lot more stuff that she did that we didn't get to finish, that we shot. But Natalie really put a stamp on the character, and Natalie really put a quality of the character that I think people have locked in on. I mean, I've seen so many people dressed as Juno Eclipse at various cons and stuff like that. And it's a good costume. I mean, look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, Imperial officer, but you know what? She's got style.
She's got that style.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered if that was like a restraining bolt on Starkiller. It's got to be some sort of...
You think so, right?
Yeah.
So, talk to me about making this game. Was it a normal casting call that you went out on? They're like, we're making some kind of crazy game. Come be mean.
It was a little bit weirder than that, man, because what happened was that there was a... Lucasfilm had this big meeting, and they were putting, they're going to launch this project, and they had to come up with a strong concept for what this character was, Starkiller, the Secret Apprentice. And this is after, all these story calls with George Lucas and all this stuff. Or story meetings, rather. And so they made this, an artist named Amy Beth Christensen made a painting of this character, as she did with a lot of the characters. And when my buddy David Collins saw the painting, along with some other people at Lucasfilm that were aware of my work, they all kind of looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, that's Amy Beth Christensen doesn't know it, but she basically painted Sam Witwer."
Yeah.
So I got a call late one night from David Collins saying, "Hey, listen, man, can you send me your reel and your resume?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "Well, Darth Vader has this apprentice." I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, never mind." And he didn't, he shut up because he was under NDA.
Yeah.
And he got my materials and just kind of slipped them in the pile. And if you looked at my headshot at the time, I mean, I looked exactly like the character. And so, one of the fun things was when I arrived at Lucasfilm, meeting Amy Beth Christensen, and all of the actors meeting Amy Beth Christensen, and she looked around and she basically saw physical representations of these people that she'd been imagining. Like Cully Fredrickson looked like General Coda, and Natalie Cox was Juno Eclipse, and Adrian Wilkinson was Maris Brood, and so it was a real thrill for her, and it was.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
And for me, it was a thrill because I was at ILM, man.
Yeah. Were you already a Star Wars nerd?
Huge Star Wars nerd. I mean, I'm the guy who, like for a lot of different reasons, George Lucas is kind of a really interesting guy to be a fan of because this is a guy who started with nothing, just kind of this nerdy independent filmmaker, and he he ended up really gaming Hollywood and just kicking their. I mean, like, for example, you no longer have creators who are really in control of their creations anymore, and that's all a direct response to what happened with Star Wars. Because here's this guy, right? He has a script that no one believes in. Everyone thinks it's crap. This concept that no one understands, and he wants to make this movie that's impossible to make, right? And the film was almost shut down 2 or 3 times, when they were making it, and everyone thought it was just going to be nothing. And George didn't even take a director's fee, really. He took a very reduced director's fee in exchange for sequel rights and soundtrack rights and merchandising rights.
Right, that nobody wanted.
Nobody wanted those things, right? So they're like, who wants the soundtrack? Whatever, who cares about that? Fine, it's going to be some stupid soundtrack. Sequel rights? Well, we're never going to make a sequel to this. It's not going to be successful. So fine, yeah, sequel rights, you can have it. And then merchandising, well, what's that? That's nothing. And George took that because he wanted to market his film. He didn't have faith that 20th Century Fox would market it very well. So then, fast forward, Star Wars is like the biggest movie of all time. Fox goes, great! And they rub their palms together like, it's time to make another one. Shall we, wait, why are you looking at me like that? And the lawyer goes, well, you're right that we should make another one, but we can't. Well, why? Because George Lucas has the rights to Star Wars.
He owns everything.
Yeah, like, well, does he have this movie? No, we have this movie. But what about going forward? Yeah, he's got it. So, then George Lucas starts working on The Empire Strikes Back, and, the rest is history. But, I mean, the nerve of that guy, I mean, he funded Empire largely himself. Star Wars movies beyond the original are independent movies.
Yeah.
And people don't really realize that, and that's, these aren't focus-tested movies. These are movies that he wanted to make. And he did it with his own money. And then reinvested the money in the company and built places like Skywalker Ranch. So hearing these stories of a guy who took on Hollywood and won big, and won so big that Hollywood never gave away those types of rights ever again.
Right.
Because they learn.
Fool us once.
Yeah, exactly. A fool me can't be fooled again, said a wise man.
Yep. A fool can't be fooled again.
Can't be fooled again. But basically, the idea is, you want me to blow you through that door with the force? With the force?
Is that what I'm doing?
There you go, man.
It's been a while.
So
you're telling me interesting stories.
So yeah, right. He's running around. So basically, yeah, like, not only his film stuff and creating THX 1138, creating American Graffiti, doing Star Wars, doing Indiana Jones, all this stuff. That's not even half of why the guy is so interesting. I mean, for example, I yesterday was recording music on my Pro Tools rig, a technology that would not exist in its current form if it weren't for the research that George Lucas put into digital editing for not just video but sound, and creating Edit Droid and creating all these different systems, creating Skywalker Sound, creating Industrial Light and Magic, which really forwarded the technology of visual effects in filmmaking, editing technologies, everything. The guy is like, extremely innovative. He knew what the industry needed, and hired the people to create that for him under his direction, or his,
So then, how do you come down on he gets a lot of hate now through the internet and the fanboys and yada yada yada. It's interesting. The Star Wars movies. I was talking to my buddy David Collins, who is the guy who put my headshot in the pile, and you have a Wookiee life debt with him.
I have a Wookiee life debt, but I kind of repaid it. Here, a little side story.
Here we go. All right.
So we were doing read-throughs, and Proxy had yet to be cast, right? Mm-hmm. And Proxy is such an interesting character. He's kind of like 3PO if 3PO was a psychopath, The idea that Darth Vader built this droid, and we never explicitly say Vader built him, but it's pretty clear that he did. Oh, look at that!
That TIE fighter knocked me down.
Knocked him down.
That's you again.
But so David Collins, was the lead sound on Force Unleashed, and when we were doing the read-through, he performed Proxy, and they were already talking about hiring a celebrity to play Proxy. They had a few people in mind, people that would have done it, and David came in and he just did it perfectly. That was Proxy, like the naivete, the innocence of the character who is trying to kill you, by the way, throughout the whole game. And in the original story, Proxy is constantly trying to kill you. Which is a fun little psychological thing that Darth Vader makes this really sincere, sweet droid, but then tasks him with trying to kill you, so that Starkiller never really trusts anyone. You know.
Yeah.
So David Collins read it. It was perfect. So I went to Hayden Blackman, the lead of the project, and the guy that wrote the script. I said, "Listen, man. Frankly, you could go and hire a celebrity, sure, but you would only direct him to do what David just did."
Right.
And I said, and furthermore, remember Anthony Daniels? He was never supposed to voice C-3PO. Anthony Daniels got in the suit, and that was what he was going to be. He was going to be the suit monkey. But, because 3PO was supposed to be like a used car salesman. But Anthony Daniels did this sort of nasty butler, and, and they couldn't change it. It was just perfect for the role. And I cited that example, and eventually David Collins got hired to play Proxy, so I got to pay him back.
There you go. Good job.
But I was talking to David, right? And you talk about George Lucas getting hate.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, love the prequels or hate them, there really isn't a single Star Wars movie, including the original, that was anywhere near what audience expectations were. Mm-hmm. Okay, look at The Empire Strikes Back. First of all, let's remember that Empire for years and years and years was not the favorite. Can you imagine sitting in a theater after the fun movie that Star Wars was, and then you watch The Empire Strikes Back, you're like, this isn't fun.
This isn't what I signed up for.
I know, exactly. Like, why is everyone dying? Why is everything depressing? Why is, oh God, and it's great, but like, that was not a movie that people expected, and it took the fans, I don't know how many years to say, Empire is the favorite.
Yeah.
Return of the Jedi pushes expectations. I mean, tonally, it's very similar to the original, but I mean, it deals with some very challenging ideas. If The Empire Strikes Back is about respect to your elders, right? Luke gets advice from Ben Kenobi and Yoda, and he doesn't listen to it, and he runs off and nearly gets himself and his friends killed, right? But then the Return of the Jedi is about reject your elders, where Ben and Yoda are like, you must kill Darth Vader because he's a dick. You have to take him out. And he's like, but I can't kill my own father. Well, then the Emperor's already won, Luke. Good job. Nice job. You did it. So, that movie is about he's now a man, and he has to reject what people are telling him to find his own solution to the problem of Darth Vader. And his solution is a compassionate one. So that's a hardcore balls out move to make. Like if Return of the Jedi was made today, Luke would have gone off to fight Darth Vader, killed him, and that would have been the end of it. No one really has an imagination to push the bounds of, thematic storytelling. People don't really have that. In feature film, people aren't really taking those kinds of risks when they're putting $300 million on
You're saying it's just easier to kill in feature films? You
Basically.
clearly didn't see Man of Steel.
A compassionate, sensitive Superman dealing with psychological issues, killing millions of people. But Return of the Jedi also had a bunch of, Muppets, and it had a bunch of teddy bears, and it also dared to make Darth Vader, the biggest villain in movie history, make him into a sympathetic character.
Right.
None of these are softball moves. These are all like really hardcore, risky maneuvers. And so, I think Jedi probably got away with a lot of it because, again, it was tonally so similar to the original, but the prequels continue the tradition of not being what anyone expected. George wanted sort of more of a let's pull out and take a macro rather than a micro view of events, and and make it more of this sort of historical thing about how a democracy becomes a dictatorship, and thematically it's still totally compatible with the originals. But I don't blame people who say, well, it should have been more charming. It should have had more humor. But at the same time, you got to respect a guy who's putting his own money on the table and making the movie that he wants to make.
Exactly. That's the big part of it, right? Of just like, at the end of the day, you want people to enjoy your work, but you have to make your work, right? Like, if you don't stand for something, what's it going to be? What's the piece going to be?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it's about. So, it's interesting. With Force Unleashed, we tried to straddle that line. We had the story that we wanted to tell, but at the same time, we were cognizant of the fact that people would have, they were going to welcome seeing stormtroopers again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's like and I'm someone who finds a lot of value in those prequel movies, but I also understand the criticisms.
Sure.
So, and I think Revenge of the Sith is pretty terrific. as the darkest of all Star Wars movies. but yeah, I mean, like, we were aware, like, okay, we're going to be giving people Darth Vader back. We're going to be giving people stormtroopers, and we took the archetypes of the original Star Wars and placed them right in the story, but then tried to put twists on them. Starkiller is basically, he's Han Solo and Luke wrapped up in one, right?
Yeah.
But he's the photo negative of Luke Skywalker, right? Look at him. He's, as you look at him, Star Wars heroes basically have 70s haircuts and blonde hair. Well, this guy has no haircut and dark hair.
Yeah.
Like, we were really trying to go for the opposite. Like, who would the guy be who's coming from the opposite end of the spectrum, who's going to meet Luke somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
And then we give him later on we give him a little bit of the snark of Han Solo, but that was us turning it on its head. Proxy is C-3PO if C-3PO is a psychopath who's trying to hurt you,
Yeah.
and doesn't understand that that's a bad thing to do. General Coda is Obi-Wan Kenobi, except he's the alcoholic football
the super
coach.
negative one.
Yeah, he's the guy. He's not the Jedi who goes, use the Force, Luke. He's the guy that goes, go out there and win. Yeah, he's the alcoholic football coach, and and Juno is I don't know if she's not really quite Princess Leia, is she? Anyway, we try to make these characters feel familiar while at the same time. Nice shot.
That's what I do.
Good shot. We try to make these characters feel somewhat familiar while at the same time bringing something new to the table.
Yeah.
So, we were very... but, tonally, though, we would do a scene, and, it was fine, but it wouldn't particularly feel like Star Wars. And so I would say, listen, can we try it again, but can we do it faster, more intense? Mm-hmm. And some people would laugh, and the reason they would laugh is like, the story is that was the only direction that George Lucas gave to the actors on the original Star Wars.
Oh, really?
Like they would do a take. George, do you like it? And he'd sit there and be silent for a second. Oh, do it again, but faster, more intense. And that's all he ever said. But in fact, one point he lost his voice, and the cast had little signs made out, one for faster and one for more intense. But if you watch Star Wars, that's the right direction.
Right.
What's more exciting? Can't get out that way. Well, it looks like you managed to cut off our only escape route. Huh. Well, maybe you'd like it back in your cell. That's not.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel like anything. Can't get out that way. Looks like you managed to cut off our only escape route. Maybe you'd like it back in your cell, Your Highness. Why you? It's like there's a 1940s pace to the dialogue because they're old style movies. They're old fashioned movies. Star Wars performances live better when they're bigger, louder, and faster. And because it's not shot in close-ups. They're big master shots.
Yeah.
And so you have to fill those master shots with personality. So we endeavored to, which is tricky with Starkiller because he's kind of a quiet brooder. But at the same time, there had to be something big about him. There had to be something, that filled that frame. So if he did talk, we try to make a statement. So, that's we really kind of studied up on our 70s movies,
Yeah. So when you were doing it, was it the whole ping pong ball suit and when you're performing, or is it? How did they do it?
They would take these little balls, right, and they put them on your chin. No, they put them on your face.
Yeah.
And I had all these little ping pong balls on the tiny little reflective balls on my face, and I must have eaten like half a dozen of them every lunch period.
Sure.
They had to reapply a bunch of them that just mysteriously went missing. But at the time, that was how they did the mocap over at ILM.
And so were they doing like a body mocap too, or was it just the facial cap while you interacted with it?
The body mocap, there was no body mocap on that one. That was video reference in terms of
Gotcha.
how the characters moved. Which was great, though, because the Starkiller's sort of body language was very much what I intended it to be when I saw the final product, which was great. Everyone seemed to be in lockstep about who these characters were and what they should be like. I was pleased that they made Starkiller as tall as General Coda because Cully Fredrickson towers over me. He's a huge guy. Big guy. So, there's a battery on the wall you gotta yank. It's right there. But yeah, they were very specific. Part of the reason why they wanted to hire actors for not just the voice but also the likeness is they wanted these sort of as George might put it, package. They wanted a package of reality for these characters.
Sure.
Because there's always the chance that if you're kind of creating a character out of whole cloth, that maybe the voice doesn't fit with physicality, or the face doesn't quite fit with the voice, or like it's not that it doesn't fit. It's just that something feels off about it, And they wanted to combat that. And the funny byproduct about that is that Force Unleashed ended up benefiting my career in a way that I really didn't anticipate, because I was marketed as the guy.
Right.
It wasn't
that was, I mean, like, you talked about them getting your reel and doing stuff. For me personally, this is the first time I remember seeing you come around, right? Yeah. And when you did, that was, like when you showed up on Smallville, I was like, oh my God, Starkiller? You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I have to imagine, for so many video game characters, right? Like, Nolan North's a voice to us. Like, we know that name.
He's incredible, too.
Huge fans know him, but, like, Drake doesn't look exactly like him. Like, you can see it in him, but it's not like he is Drake, right? So that's that difference.
Well, and and think about how often he might be stopped in the street if he was Drake.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the experience I've had with Force Unleashed has been one where the fans, either in public and certainly at cons, don't let me forget about the character, which is really nice.
Yeah. Is it the thing you get recognized for the most?
It was for a while. Now it's just a variety of stuff.
Sure.
But I will say that in the 6 years since this has been released, really not a week goes by where someone doesn't ask me about it, which is, so surprising to me. It's a wonderful thing to be associated so closely with something that people enjoyed. I love that about it. And of course, it's Star Wars. It's it's interesting. I was very lucky to have the opportunity, because now that we're moving into this different, this new era for Star Wars, it's a very exciting time for Star Wars fans, and I feel very fortunate that I got to kind of help a bunch of people bear the torch from one guard to the next, because the movies were done, and for all we knew, that was all that was going to happen for Star Wars. There was some talk this live action thing might happen, but it was never entirely a certainty. And this live action TV show.
Yeah, I remember it.
And basically, this was Star Wars. They were marketing this like a movie. They threw movie-like money behind it, for God's sakes. This was. I'm not at liberty to tell you what the budget was on this, but it was substantial. Biggest budget project I've ever been involved in by far. And so, at that time, the movies were done and there wasn't any, Star Wars was kind of, had a potential of kind of dropping down in terms of public consciousness. And so Force Unleashed kind of held the attention of the older fans while Clone Wars started at the same time. Clone Wars ignited the younger fans, and then Force Unleashed sort of kept the older fans busy until the Clone Wars started servicing the older fans.
Yeah, totally.
You haven't watched the Clone Wars, have you?
No.
Dude, you're missing out, man.
I gotta change it.
You really are. How big of a Star Wars fan are you?
I'm middle of the road.
Middle of the road.
Yeah.
It's I don't say this lightly, but it's the best animated show ever made. It's incredible production values, and frankly, to be totally honest, when it started, it wasn't for me.
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of a fun, it's a fun animated Star Wars show. Cool, great, the kids will love it. Low about season 2, a Jedi gets tortured to death for information.
Damn.
I'm like, whoa, wait a second now.
Yeah.
You're the Jedi's getting tortured, and you're expecting someone to come in and save him, and it never happens. They keep torturing him until he gives up and he dies. And you're just like, oh, wait a second now. And they start telling these war stories and stories about bad Jedi generals who just aren't suited for the task, and stories about clone soldiers who don't want to fight in the war, and they're living in a slave army. They were born into it, and all kinds of really interesting stories and interesting characters and characterizations. And not only that, the production value gets better and better as the years go on. There was a concerted effort made every year to age the show, not just age the characters, but also age the show.
What does that mean?
Meaning, season 1 was a kid's show.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Season 2 was a little bit more sophisticated kid's show. Season 3 was now kind of a teenager show. It started getting into some stuff. Season 4, you start getting into Empire Strikes Back territory.
Gotcha.
And then season 5, everyone dies. So, I mean, my stint as Darth Maul, I think I killed off no fewer than 4 recurring characters off the show.
Nice. That's a good point.
You know, I mean, it's and these were all George's stories. You know, this is his show, and he tells things that actually fill in some really interesting gaps in all of the movies, all 6 of them. So, you know, it's.
All right, I'll check it out.
You should check it out. I mean, again, if season 1 is not to your liking, skip ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
Season 1 is a lot of fun to watch once you know where it goes in season 5, because then you're like, oh, you know,
that makes so much
characters
sense.
don't know each other that well, and oh, look at this, and it's really, really great. The actors are fantastic, and then also they get some really wonderful guest talent, like, you know, Simon Pegg shows up as Dengar. You got Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn. You got Jon Favreau playing a really, really interesting character. Katie Sackhoff from Battlestar. Lots of people were on that show.
Are you holding out hope with the new movies that you get to make a cameo?
Oh, you know, that seems like such a long shot to me.
I know, but
You
still. You're part of it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting. I don't, at this point, I don't, you know, I know aspects of Lucasfilm, you know, and I have relationships there, certainly, but it's still such a new game. I mean, I don't really know how things work just yet. So, you know, I'm just kind of
going with the flow.
Going with the flow,
That's what
you
I
know,
do.
trying to be supportive where I can, you know, in terms of bringing everything, you know, helping in whatever small way that I can. If they ever want me to do stuff, I'm always available.
That's awesome.
So, you know.
Well, Sam, thank you so much for coming by, watching me play as you. That's
Yeah.
weird, right?
Yeah, look at that.
Look at that's you. But you're right next to me. Oh God, I gotta kill these guys. You're of course here because you run Up at Noon. That's the most recent Up at Noon. Go to go.ign.com/Up at Noon EPS, EPS, and you'll get to see that one. Or it's hopefully still just on IGN. Just go check it out there. But a lot of things happen. You're here. Your current show is Being Human.
Yes, sir.
People should go watch that on Sci-Fi.
They should. January 13th starts our season 4.
Well, great. It's been a pleasure. For everything about Star Wars, video games, and Sam, keep it here on IGN.